Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Detect Team. Today, what you see in front of you is a familiar sight to most PC enthusiasts, and if you don't know what this is, well, how come you don't? But if you don't know what this is the Firestrike benchmark for computers, and yeah, that's right, I'm finally showing off my main computer on this channel. So, what we're doing today is that I'm doing an investigation to see what would be better, two 670's, or a single 1060. And I'm doing three tests. I'm doing this, GTA 5, and Overwatch and Time Spy if I can get it running on the 670's. Now, this isn't going to be exactly apples to apples because I'm feeling a bit lazy, so I'm not going to be taking the 1060 out of my system. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using a 3930K system I have to test it with, and I've overclocked it to where it performs about the same, about a few percent worse than my i7 single core. So FPS should be the same, and cats. So FPS should be the same. Well, mostly close enough to the same. So, yeah. Oh, and by the way, yes, I know my desk is a mess. I don't feel like ever fixing it. So, I'm gonna let this finish, do Time Spy, and then I'm gonna drag the big ol' 3930K system in here. Alright, so for you that was like less than a second, but for me it was a few hours, as you can see. It's now nighttime outside, and I've changed places because reasons. Mainly I just didn't feel like dragging this thing all the way to where my monitor was, so I dragged my monitor in here. So I'm now running on my 3930K test bench, but yeah, I got the two 670's down there, and right now I'm crushing Firestrike. So, let's see what the scores are. I've already benched Time Spy and it completed fine, but score was a little low because, as you can see here, can't really see, but these 670's, they only have 2 gigs of VRAM, so that's really probably the reason why I'm not going to be using these things instead of my 1060, even if it outperforms it by quite a bit, because these things just don't have very much VRAM for today's games. So, I'm gonna let this finish, and probably after this clip I'll have a summary and show the results of all the tests. Okay, so it's a few days later, and something has changed with my computer. I'm sure you can't tell it from here, but I threw the 3930K motherboard in here. The 1060's in here right now, and I'm benchmarking it. And I've rerun the Firestrike and Time Spy benchmarks to more accurately reflect what an actual apples to apples comparison would be. I was going to use my 4790 scores, but I ended up just tossing that in the trash since I wasn't expecting to swap this motherboard in here so soon, because the case that it was in had a lock on the front panel, and I looked up like maybe someone had managed to pick that lock, but apparently they just took off the front panel and you can just get the hard drives out that way, and lo and behold, yeah, that did work. So kind of flimsy mechanism there. So running the benchmark there, and maybe I can get this back here to so you can see. You can actually see what this is saying, but if you can see it, yeah, I put the motherboard in there. So I'll get the numbers from this, and then I'll film the conclusion. So here are the results. In GTA 5, the 1060 managed an average of 79 FPS, whereas the 670's and SLI managed 88.8. About a 10% increase, give or take. In Overwatch, the 1060 crunched out 73.3 FPS on average, whereas the 670s cranked out 93.3. In Firestrike, the 1060 gave a graphics score of 12,902, and the 670s barely beat it out with a score of 13,071. Interestingly though, in TimeSpy, a DirectX 12 benchmark, the 1060 scored 4270s, and the 670s actually lost in this test with a score of 3650. This might have likely been due to the fact that the 670s I used were 2GB models and they were running out of VRAM. So, conclusion time. Am I putting the 670s in my main rig? No. For 3 reasons. 1, the aforementioned 2 gigs of VRAM is not enough for modern games. In fact, I had those cards crash Overwatch when I was playing in competitive mode due to a lack of VRAM. Second reason, I don't really want to melt my Corsair CX 750M power supply. It might be able to handle the 670s on their own, but the thing also has a 3930K to power, which is a somewhat power-hungry chip. If hardware monitor is anything to go by, it was drawing about 200 watts, and yeah, that's a lot. Even if I did have a beefy enough supply, running those things in SLI would still be a lot of power, which is being handled by 2 power strips or surge protectors. To give you an example, my 1060 has 1 6-pin power connector, whereas one of the 670s has 2, effectively 4 times the power draw. For reference, the Founders 1080 Ti is a 6-pin plus 8-pin card, so even still, it takes a lot more power than a 1080 Ti, and it's worse performing than it because generational improvements. All of that power is required for just a 10 to 20% increase in frame rate. So, no, I am not putting those 670s on my main system. Anyway, thank you guys for watching the Tech Teen, and I will see you in the future.